Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Michel Foucault in Discourse Analysis. Michel Foucault, a French philosopher and social theorist, is one of the most influential figures in the field of discourse analysis. His work fundamentally reshaped how scholars understand the relationship between language, power, knowledge, and society. Foucault's approach to discourse analysis is not just about examining language itself, but about exploring how discourses create and regulate knowledge, influence behavior, and sustain power structures. 1. Key concepts in Foucault's discourse analysis. Point 1. Discourse. For Foucault, discourse is more than just language or speech. It refers to the systems of knowledge and practices that define and regulate what can be said, thought, and done within a particular context. Discourses shape our understanding of reality by determining what is considered true, normal, or acceptable. Example: the medical discourse of the 19th century defined madness in specific ways, influencing how people with mental illnesses were treated, categorized, and understood. This discourse not only reflected medical knowledge but also shaped it, determining who had the authority to diagnose and treat mental illness. Point 2. Power, knowledge. One of Foucault's central ideas is that power and knowledge are inseparable. He coined the term power, knowledge, to emphasize that power is not just something that is exercised through repression or coercion, but also through the production of knowledge. Discourses are a key mechanism through which power operates, as they establish what is considered true or false, normal or abnormal. Example: in the context of prisons, Foucault argued that the discourse of criminality and discipline constructs the idea of the delinquent and justifies the practices of surveillance, punishment, and reform. The knowledge produced about criminals through criminology, psychology, and law is both a product of power and a tool to exercise it. Point 3. Genealogy. Foucault's method of genealogy involves tracing the history of discourses to reveal how they have developed over time and how they have been shaped by power relations. Genealogy uncovers the contingent, rather than natural or inevitable, nature of social phenomena by showing how they have been constructed through historical processes. Example: Foucault's genealogical analysis of the concept of sexuality. In his work, The History of Sexuality reveals how the discourse on sexuality has changed from the 18th century to the present. He shows how sexuality became a focal point for various forms of power, from the church to the state to psychiatry, each constructing sexuality in ways that served specific interests. Point 4. Archaeology. Archaeology is another methodological approach developed by Foucault, which involves analyzing the rules and structures that govern discourses at different points in history. Rather than focusing on the content of what is said, archaeology examines the underlying conditions that make certain statements possible and others impossible within a given period. Example: in The Order of Things, Foucault performs an archaeological analysis of the human sciences, exploring how concepts like man and human nature emerged as objects of study. He examines how the discursive conditions of different historical periods have shaped what counts as knowledge and how this knowledge is organized. Point 5. Disciplinary power and biopolitics. Foucault introduced the concepts of disciplinary power and biopolitics to explain how modern societies regulate individuals and populations. Disciplinary power refers to the way institutions like schools, prisons, and hospitals control and normalize behavior through surveillance, examination, and correction. Biopolitics, on the other hand, involves the regulation of populations through policies and practices that manage health, reproduction, and life itself. Example: the discourse of public health is a form of biopolitics that involves the regulation of populations by promoting certain behaviors, e.g., vaccination, hygiene, and discouraging others, e.g., smoking. Through public health campaigns, the state exerts power over the biological existence of individuals and groups, framing certain lifestyles as healthy or unhealthy. Point 2. Foucault's influence on discourse analysis. Foucault's ideas have had a profound impact on discourse analysis, particularly in the following ways. 1. Focus on power relations. Foucault's work shifted the focus of discourse analysis from the content of language to the power relations that underpin and shape discourses. By analyzing how discourses are used to exert power, scholars can uncover the ways in which language maintains social hierarchies, marginalizes certain groups, and controls knowledge. Example: in educational discourse, Foucault's influence can be seen in studies that examine how language is used to maintain power dynamics between teachers and students, or how curricula are designed to reinforce certain ideologies while excluding others. Point 2. Deconstructing taken for granted knowledge. Foucault's emphasis on the historical contingency of discourses encourages discourse analysts to question and deconstruct what is often taken for granted as truth or common sense. This approach reveals that what is considered normal or natural is often the result of specific historical and social processes. Example: discourse analysis of gender might explore how concepts like masculinity and femininity have been constructed and normalized through medical, legal, and educational discourses over time, challenging the idea that these categories are fixed or innate. Point 3. Understanding the role of institutions. Foucault's analysis of institutions, such as prisons, schools, and hospitals, highlights how discourses within these institutions are used to regulate behavior and maintain order. Discourse analysis can thus examine how institutional language and practices contribute to the control and categorization of individuals. Example: in a hospital setting, the discourse surrounding patient care often reflects power dynamics between doctors and patients. Foucault's approach would encourage an analysis of how medical discourse categorizes patients, constructs authority, and manages bodies. Point 3. Examples of Foucault's approach in discourse analysis. Example 1. The medicalization of society. Foucault's analysis of the medicalization of society shows how medical discourse has expanded to regulate various aspects of life, beyond just disease treatment. This discourse constructs certain behaviors as pathological, and others as normal, often serving to reinforce social control. Example: the discourse surrounding mental health has evolved to include a wide range of behaviors and emotions as disorders, such as anxiety or attention deficit disorder, ADD. Foucault's approach would analyze how this medical discourse frames these conditions, the power relations involved, e.g., between doctors and patients, and how these categories shape social norms. Example 2. The discourse of sexuality. Foucault's exploration of the discourse of sexuality reveals how sexuality has been constructed as a central aspect of identity, subject to regulation and control. By tracing the history of sexual discourse, Foucault shows how different periods have produced different understandings and norms around sexuality. Example: the shift from viewing homosexuality as a sin to considering it a psychological disorder, and then to recognizing it as a legitimate sexual orientation, demonstrates how discourses of sexuality are contingent and change over time. Foucault's analysis would explore how these shifts are tied to broader social and political power dynamics. Conclusion: Michel Foucault's contributions to discourse analysis have fundamentally altered how we understand the relationship between language, power, and knowledge. His concepts of discourse, power, knowledge, genealogy, and biopolitics provide powerful tools for analyzing how social realities are constructed and maintained through language. By examining how discourses shape our understanding of the world, Foucault's approach reveals the underlying power structures that influence everything from individual identities to institutional practices. His work continues to be a cornerstone of critical discourse analysis, influencing a wide range of fields including sociology, political science, education, and gender studies. Frequently asked questions: who is Michel Foucault and why is he important in discourse analysis? Michel Foucault was a French philosopher and social theorist whose work has significantly influenced discourse analysis. He is known for exploring the relationship between language, power, knowledge, and society, fundamentally reshaping how scholars understand these concepts. Foucault's approach to discourse analysis goes beyond language itself, focusing on how discourses create and regulate knowledge, influence behavior, and sustain power structures. What does Foucault mean by discourse? For Foucault, discourse refers to systems of knowledge and practices that define and regulate what can be said, thought, and done within a particular context. Discourse shapes our understanding of reality by determining what is considered true, normal, or acceptable. It's not just about language but about the underlying power structures that govern how knowledge is produced and understood. What is the concept of power, knowledge, in Foucault's work? Foucault's concept of power, knowledge, emphasizes that power and knowledge are inseparable. Power is exercised through the production of knowledge, and discourses are key mechanisms through which power operates. For example, in medical discourse, the knowledge produced about health and illness is both a product of power, e.g., who controls medical institutions, and a tool for exercising power, e.g., regulating behavior through health norms. What is Foucault's method of genealogy? Genealogy is a method developed by Foucault to trace the history of discourses and uncover how they have been shaped by power relations over time. It reveals the contingent nature of social phenomena, showing that what we take as natural or inevitable is often the result of specific historical processes. Genealogy uncovers how certain discourses have come to dominate and how they have been used to control and regulate societies. How does Foucault's concept of archaeology differ from genealogy? Archaeology is another method used by Foucault, which focuses on analyzing the rules and structures that govern discourses at different historical moments. Unlike genealogy, which traces the development of discourses over time, archaeology examines the underlying conditions that make certain statements possible within a particular period. It's about understanding the historical conditions of possibility for different forms of knowledge. What are disciplinary power and biopolitics, according to Foucault? Disciplinary power refers to the ways institutions like schools, prisons, and hospitals control and normalize individual behavior through techniques like surveillance, examination, and correction. Biopolitics involves the regulation of populations through policies and practices that manage life, health, and reproduction. Both concepts explain how modern societies exercise control over individuals and populations, not just through laws and coercion but through the regulation of everyday life. How has Foucault's work influenced discourse analysis? Foucault's work has profoundly influenced discourse analysis in several ways. Focus on power relations, shifting the analysis from content to the power relations that underpin discourses. Deconstructing knowledge, encouraging analysts to question what is considered truth or common sense, and to explore how these ideas are constructed. Institutional analysis, examining how institutions use discourse to regulate behavior and maintain order, highlighting the role of language in reinforcing social hierarchies and norms. Can you give an example of Foucault's approach to discourse analysis? One example is Foucault's analysis of the medicalization of society, where he explores how medical discourse has expanded to regulate various aspects of life, beyond just treating disease. For instance, the discourse around mental health has evolved to include a wide range of behaviors as disorders. Foucault would analyze how this medical discourse categorizes these behaviors, the power dynamics involved, and how these categories shape social norms. How does Foucault's concept of discourse relate to identity construction? Foucault's concept of discourse is crucial for understanding identity construction because discourses define and regulate the categories through which people understand themselves and others. For example, the discourse of gender shapes how identities like masculine and feminine are constructed, maintained, and challenged. These identities are not fixed but are produced through discursive practices that reflect and reinforce societal power relations. How does Foucault's idea of power differ from traditional views? Traditional views often see power as something possessed by individuals or groups and exercised through coercion or control. Foucault, however, views power as diffuse and pervasive, operating through everyday practices, institutions, and discourses. Power is not just repressive but also productive. It produces knowledge, norms, identities, and social realities. This understanding of power emphasizes how it is embedded in all aspects of social life. What is an example of Foucault's concept of biopolitics in modern society? An example of biopolitics in modern society is public health campaigns, which regulate populations by promoting behaviors like vaccination, hygiene, and healthy eating. These campaigns use the discourse of health to exert power over individuals' biological existence, framing certain lifestyles as healthy and others as risky or undesirable. This form of governance extends power into the most intimate aspects of life, including health and reproduction. How can Foucault's approach be applied to contemporary issues? Foucault's approach can be applied to contemporary issues such as the regulation of digital spaces, the medicalization of everyday life, or the management of populations during pandemics. By analyzing the discourses surrounding these issues, one can uncover how power is exercised, how knowledge is produced, and how social norms are constructed and enforced. What is the significance of Foucault's idea of discourse? For understanding societal norms, Foucault's idea of discourse is significant for understanding societal norms because it shows how these norms are not natural or inevitable but are constructed through language and practices that reflect and reinforce power relations. By analyzing discourse, we can see how societal norms are produced, maintained, and sometimes challenged, revealing the underlying power dynamics that shape social life. How does Foucault's work challenge traditional notions of truth and knowledge? Foucault's work challenges traditional notions of truth and knowledge by arguing that what we consider truth is not objective or universal but is produced through discourses that are tied to power. Knowledge is not merely a reflection of reality but is constructed through the discourses that dominate at any given time. This perspective encourages a critical examination of how truths are produced and who benefits from their acceptance. Why is Foucault's work still relevant today? Foucault's work remains relevant today because it provides powerful tools for analyzing how power operates in contemporary society, particularly through language, institutions, and knowledge production. His ideas continue to influence a wide range of fields, including sociology, political science, gender studies, and cultural studies, offering insights into how social realities are constructed and how power is maintained and challenged.